When I finished my first year of college, I was eager for a vacation, and I planned a big trip to take. My best friend, John, lived next to me, and there was an old hospital down the road from us. It used to be a mental asylum, but something happened when we were in high school and they shut that asylum down for good. Since then, it's been sitting there rotting away for years. One summer night, John and I were drinking, and we mistakenly entered the parking lot of the mental asylum. We didn't have the slightest idea that it was the parking lot of that abandoned hospital. When we finally realized it, we had already walked so far in, and there it stood, a high-standing, abandoned building. There was a tattered sign outside the door where we stood. It said, "Restricted Area," and that's when our curiosity got the best of us. It was adventure that we craved, probably because we were drunk, too. We were entirely unaware of the danger that stood inside, waiting for us. We had never been in there before, and we didn't know anyone who ever had. We pushed forward and checked the building out. The very first door we walked up to had a rock jammed in between the doorframe, which allowed us to enter. At this point, we realized that this could potentially be a very bad idea if we got caught. We could suffer some consequences, but we were careful. And we tried our best to be as quiet as possible and make it a quick trip. This is where things took a turn, or rather a few turns. As we entered the building, the silence of that building was eating me from the inside. The sound of the door closing behind us echoed like a bomb going off. We then got confirmation that this place was genuinely creepy. We walked slowly, but the floor was covered with broken glass from the windows. Our footsteps were echoing aggressively in the building. We found a patient's room which still had beds inside. We stopped at the doorway to look inside, and the floor looked sketchy. Out of nowhere, from around the corner, we heard a slow and faint whistle. I just stared at John because even a whisper sounded like yelling in this place. We both had our feet planted to the ground because any movement would make us known. We assumed that there must have been a guard or a caretaker of the building. John gestured that we have to leave, as we couldn't just stand there because the whistling wasn't stopping. At that point, we turned toward the opposite side of the corner where the whistling was coming from, and we tiptoed away in perfect silence. Then, the whistling stopped, and we froze. We heard the glass crunching from around the corner, and we started running. Once we got to the door we came in from, we realized we hadn't put the rock back in the door frame when we entered, and the door was completely stuck shut. We were trying to get the door open as the glass crunching got closer and closer. We were terrified. The noise of the glass stopped right at the other side door, which was closed on our right. We stood there quietly for some time, hoping that someone would open the door from the outside. The doorknob started to turn, and we held each other with fear. The doorknob started to turn from the outside, but then it suddenly stopped. Silence took over, and we turned around to try another door, which we were able to force open. The room seemed to be an operating room, which was completely empty except for a single, perfectly placed and aligned landline phone plugged into the wall, and a stretcher with blood on it. The phone was off the hook and making a dial tone, perfectly lined up and centered with the whole room. I'd never seen anything like it. The dial tone was loud and echoing, but there was no power connected to the hospital. So how was it working? I was in shock. We didn't have time to think, so we sprinted towards the exit, only to find the exit doors jammed again. We were trapped there for a moment with the continuous fear of death. Panic surged through us, and we knew that we had to escape this nightmarish place. Summoning all of our strength, we pushed, pulled, and heaved against the door to force it open. It creaked and resisted. But as we heard the footsteps again, we gave the door our best shot to escape before the footsteps got too close to us. Finally, the door fell on the ground with a loud thud, freeing us from the clutches of that deadly abandoned hospital. We left the place as soon as we could and never went back.